Welcome to Numina, the only place that's reverse engineered the College Board. We're going to show you how to solve these problems very quickly with mathematical precision and with 100% confidence. That means you no longer have to rely on the answer key, but purely on the power of your knowledge. The mind is a powerful tool, and we're going to show you how to use it. Here's how it's done. 22. Let's read this question first. It was a Chinese-American grower who finally succeeded with adapting the now familiar orange tree to the American climate. Let's look at A. It was. In A, we're looking for subject-verb, pronoun, and verb tense. So let's do a subject-verb check. It singular and was is singular. We're fine here. So we're going to move on to pronoun. This is actually a very tricky question. The word it, although it's born as a pronoun, as in its original part of speech is a pronoun, it's not functioning as a pronoun here. Some of you are thinking, what? Well, let's look at our note. Sometimes the pronoun it does not replace a noun and functions as an expletive in the sentence. An expletive is a word to fill in a vacancy in the sentence. For example, it is sunny outside. The word it in it is sunny outside is not a pronoun replacing a noun. It's an expletive. It's just filling in the vacancy so that we can finish the sentence. So we can actually eliminate pronoun as a possible error. How can you tell the difference between an expletive and a pronoun when it is used? Well, when we're trying to make a factual statement, oftentimes we would start the sentence with it is or it was. So this is one way you can tell. And some of you probably know a different definition of what an expletive means. Foul language. That's not how we're using an expletive here. An expletive here is simply a word to fill in a vacancy in the sentence. Let's move on to verb tense. Let's look at was. Was is in the simple past tense. Again, it's very important to look for tense clues throughout the sentence. Oftentimes, like I said in the previous slide, adverbs are very, very helpful. But sometimes adverbs are not available. Then what do? You look for other verbs. So let's look at the other verb, succeeded. Can this be a tense clue? It certainly can. Because it was a Chinese-American grower who finally succeeded. Meaning, the expletive it is trying to define when a Chinese-American grower succeeded in what he did. So the simple past tense here works perfectly. Let's move on to B.
In B, we have with adapting. Here we're going to test for modifier, idiom, and verb form errors. To start, let's check to see if we have any errors as a modifier. Well, here we have with adapting, and it's modifying succeeded. Does this work? Well, let's take a look. We're going to have to look and check also for idiom. Succeeded with adapting? This would suggest that the grower succeeded together with adapting, and adapting can't do that. Maybe another person would be able to, but certainly not adapting. We need a different idiom here to make this appropriate. And we're going to spoon feed it to you, just like we have done previously. Here you should memorize the idiom succeeded in plus present participle. So we need to change our preposition with to in if we want this to work. Succeeded in adapting. Well, you might ask, well, what does that mean? Well, that means that this grower was successful in this endeavor, this activity, or in some field. In this case, adapting the now familiar orange tree to the American climate. He was successful in that. So that would be the proper idiom. So it looks like we do have an idiom error here. But let's also check for verb form. Well, adapting is the present participle form. So we actually have the proper form to make this idiom work. So the verb form is okay. What do you think, Anthony Simpson? Did we check off everything here?
I think you did great.
So let's move on to C.
Now familiar. We can do a modifier check here. There are no other possible errors that could occur. So now is functioning as an adverb and it's modifying familiar. When was it familiar? Now. So in this case, we need to do another check with the adjective familiar. Familiar seems to be modifying the noun orange tree. Can an adjective modify a noun?
Sure.
And can adverbs modify adjectives?
Sure can.
So why aren't we moving on to point D?
Let's move on to D. 2. For D, we're going to check for, again, it's a preposition, so we're going to check for idioms. Well, Anthony Simpson, do we have another idiom we want to spoon feed our listeners?
We certainly do. The idiom is familiar to.
Familiar to. Okay, so how does this work?
It works when you memorize it.
Ah, okay. So what is the idiom? I see familiar to plus noun.
That's correct. So something is familiar to something, or familiar X to something.
Okay.
So familiar can function as an adjective, and to is a preposition taking on a noun or an object.
Okay, and it looks like we have that here, right?
Exactly.
Familiar.
You should not have chased this idiom.
Okay. Great. So this idiom is one that is correct, and we should not chase it. After going through the choices, it looks like we were correct in finding an error at B. It's an idiom error. We need to correct this idiom by eliminating with adapting and changing it to succeeded in adapting.
Notice we had another idiom in the sentence, familiar to. You need to memorize both idioms. Now you know both idioms, so next time you see a sentence or a question involving these two idioms, you know exactly where the error is at. Noumena, empowering minds.